My name's Jeff Miller, and I'm the CEO of Potentia. My career started rather inauspiciously. I was I cold called my way into a job as an IT recruiter in Boston right out of college with no idea about either IT or recruiting. But fortunately, I was surrounded by some really talented people who had pity on me and taught me the business. And I was fortunate enough to have some success while I was there. I started out as a recruiter, as I mentioned, then moved into sales. And within a few years, I was tapped to move out to the West Coast and open up offices for the company. I stayed out there for 8 years, and one office became 5. Ultimately, I became the Western Region Vice President. And after about 11 years with the company sold. From there, I decided that I wanted to try my hand at solutions. I had some experience in the IT solution space, and I really liked the value that we were able to provide to customers in that space. So I took a position with a phase 2 growth company in healthcare consulting as the division president. We were able to grow that business. I was fortunate to run the fastest growing division of that company, and then the company ultimately sold after I'd been there for about 4 years. At that point, I was at a bit of a crossroads, and I struggled with whether I wanted to go back into staffing or not, and ultimately I did as the president of a global staffing firm. And the reason I went back was I got recruited to a company that I really respected. Number one, they were global, and I wanted to get that global experience. And number two, a lot of businesses in the staffing space are very transactional, and I felt that these guys were pretty strategic in terms of what they did, and they were providing more value add to the customers that they worked with. So while I was running the business day to day, I also had the opportunity to sit down with our biggest customers and talk to them about things like how they were trying to lower turnover, increase hiring of more millennials, implement new technologies, things like that. So it had been a goal of mine to become the president of a global company, and I was very pleased to reach that goal and have a good deal of success while I was there. If I look back on the time that I spent prior to launching Potentia, a few things stand out. Number one, it was always critical that I surround myself with talent, hopefully people that were smarter than I was, that I could learn from. Number two, there's no substitute for hard work. And number three, I think if you're not always thinking about how you can provide additional value to your customers, your competitors are, and you're going to fall behind. So those were 3 lessons that I learned that I think positioned me well for the next phase of my career in launching Potentia. So the story of Potentia really begins with my son, Charlie. Charlie's a teenager today, but when he was 6, he was diagnosed on the autism spectrum. And it's one of those days that you never forget. On the one hand, my wife and I felt like we were relieved to at least know what the diagnosis was. On the other hand, it was scary, and we were so far away from being experts on what autism was. We had an awful lot of homework to do. We quickly dug in and figured out what that meant for Charlie, and what we needed to do as parents to help him to be his best self. That took the form of really looking at each year to year, looking at his schooling and what kind of supports he needed, what kind of tutors he needed. We went from public to private, and ultimately ended up homeschooling him. And today he's doing really well. But the genesis for Potentia really started for me as the dad of a wonderful young man who's on the spectrum. So fast forward about a decade, and Charlie's now 16, and we're up in Massachusetts at my mom's funeral. And we'd gotten Charlie to a pretty good place at that point. He was doing well on that year-to-year trajectory that I had talked about. And I remember that this really stood out to me as I was standing there at the funeral, and I was looking across the church, and I saw Charlie comforting my father. And it really hit me at that time that I needed to raise my game, that I had a really capable young man on my hands here, and that I needed to stop just thinking year to year. I really needed to start thinking decade to decade about what adult autism was going to look like, and how I could help Charlie be his best self as an adult. And that was really a turning point for me. And it led me to launch a research project, again, really just as a dad, to learn more about adult autism, and what it meant and what it was going to look like for Charlie. And the more I learned, the more I just fell in love with the community, and really just learned some amazing things that ultimately lit the spark that started Potentia. So this research project was really interesting, and it brought me into conversations I never thought I'd have with people all over the world, in Europe and Australia, throughout the United States, talking to parents, talking to business people. One of the first things that stood out to me was just how many Charlies there are out there. So the numbers vary depending on which study you cite, but in the U.S. it's easily more than 3 million people in the U.S. that are on the spectrum. The second thing that really stood out to me and just blew me away as both a dad and as a business person was the 80% unemployment rate for college-educated individuals on the spectrum. So if you're autistic and you've successfully navigated college, you still have a 4 out of 5 chance of not even being able to get a job, and that just blew me away. When I learned that, I felt like I needed to do something. I didn't know what it was going to be yet, but I knew I had to do something to be part of the solution. As I was doing my research, 3 stats really stood out to me and told me that I might be onto something here, not just as a dad, but as a business person. The first I mentioned is the 80% number, 80% unemployment. So if you're a college grad and you've successfully navigated school, you still have a 4 to 5 chance of not being successful in getting hired. And that's just crazy. You've obviously shown that you can do the work, and businesses are really missing out on that. The second stat that I learned was of those folks that are hired successfully, their turnover averages less than 5% per year, which tells you that not only are they very loyal employees, but remember, these folks are working for-profit organizations in most cases, so they're earning it every day. They're not going to be retained if they're not successful at what they're doing. So that just again underscores the missed opportunity for those businesses that are missing this population. And then the third one comes from SAP, a company that is really one of the pioneers in the United States for neurodiversity hiring. They've had programs going on for 6+ years. And they've got individuals working in 21 different roles. So the idea that individuals on the spectrum can only fill roles in, let's say, IT or even working in the mailroom could not be further from the truth. And so when I look at the need that existed, the value of these individuals once they get on the ground and are working, and the diversity of roles that they can fill. To me, this was just a clear case of a real problem that needed addressing, and one that I thought Potentia could play a part in improving. So when we established Potentia, we thought it was really important to underline what our core values are, and for us that starts with inclusion. As a company that was founded based on the idea that corporate America needs more neurodiversity, that's in our DNA. That's part of everything that we do. So not only do we help companies embrace neurodiversity, we embrace it ourselves. So we have neurodiverse individuals at all levels of the organization. We think it's really important that you always walk the talk in these types of things. The second thing is innovation. And this comes really naturally from the fact that we are so inclusive. Individuals who are neurodiverse are by definition innovative. They literally think differently. And so when you introduce that type of thinking to a group of really smart people, you get a force multiplier. You get even more you get new solutions and to thorny problems that I think are particularly timely today. The third core value for us is inspiration. We feel like it's not just our responsibility to introduce diversity and inclusion. We really want to help organizations to run better, and part of that is capturing the passions and the excitements of the individuals who work with the company. We get lots of feedback from our customers talking about how they feel better about the company that they work for as a result of the programs that we're part of. So we think that neurodiversity has a real opportunity to inspire not just the individuals that we place, but everyone that's involved in the programs that we run. And then the fourth one is really the glue that ties it all together, and that's integrity. So you've got to walk the talk, as I said, but you've got to say what you mean and mean what you say, and you've got to follow through on all your commitments. And I think for us, those core values are really critical. They're critical for us to attract like-minded individuals, and they're also critical for us to really have a roadmap for where we want to go as an organization. So when we talk about Potentia and bringing neurodiversity to corporate America, we do it in three different ways. We say we bring neurodiversity by the program, by the project, or by the product. The program would be our STARS program, which is spectrum training, recruitment, and support, which I know we'll talk about more. Projects would be turnkey projects that we do for customers where maybe they don't want to engage in a hiring program, maybe they have a hiring freeze, but they still have critical technology or analytics work that they need to get done. And we can introduce them to diversity of thought and neurodiversity by way of doing turnkey IT projects for them. And then the product is a new product for us, which we're incredibly proud of, that was developed really over the last several months in response to the COVID crisis. And it's called Potentia Health Registry. It relies on our core expertise in technology and analytics, but it's really designed to help schools and businesses and municipalities to be able to engage with their people, their students, their populations, to have better health outcomes. And it's something that we're incredibly proud of. So STARS stands for Spectrum Training, Recruitment, and Support. But it really involves neurodiversity as a whole. It's really the program by which we introduce neurodiverse candidates into corporate America. And we do it by training. And this surprises some people, but we focus on primarily training the employer. We find that a lot of the applicants are largely ready to go. They just need an employer to meet them halfway. And so our training is about how to interview and onboard and manage effectively someone who's on the spectrum to let them be their best. Once we've trained that employer, we then recruit individuals for pre-screened roles to place within that organization. But then we don't just drop them off. We support both the employer and the worker through an initial period of time through onboarding, ultimately really to career, to the career pathing piece, because we don't just want folks to get jobs. We're interested in folks getting careers. And so that's a big part of what we do. Some hallmarks of the program. Number one, again, aligning with our core values, the program is inclusive. So a lot of the training that we offer is done by neurodiverse individuals themselves. So the employer gets a unique perspective on neurodiversity and can ask any questions that they want to neurodiverse individuals who are part of our staff. We think that that's really important. Number two, everything that we do is ROI based. So we always tie it back. While there's tremendous goodwill in what we do, and we're incredibly proud to do what we do, we recognize that for-profit businesses need an ROI. They need to see specific, measurable results. And so we help them to establish what those goals should be, and then track to make sure that we're hitting those goals as a part of the program. And then the third piece of STARS that I would highlight is that it's holistic. So It's holistic in that we think that, and the data shows that for individuals to be successful, again, you need to train people around that individual, number one. And number two, when you do that, everybody benefits, not just the new hire, but the entire team. So those are some of the core aspects of STARS and why I believe we've had such success with it. So one of the reasons we feel so strongly about the STARS program is going back to that 80% number. That tells us that our economy is not working nearly as efficiently as it might. We've already talked about the talent of these individuals, and that 80%, that so many companies are missing out on this talent, number one. And for us to be as competitive as we want to be as a nation, that's a problem. Number two, 80% unemployment means that there are a lot of societal inefficiencies there. If these individuals aren't working, they're on public support, and long term, that really does damage to the individual. Again, these are highly intelligent individuals who know that they're capable of a lot more. And so I don't want to get too lost in the statistics without thinking about the individual impact for folks that are unemployed for long periods of time, really through no fault of their own. So the work that we're doing with STARS, really it benefits businesses, it benefits society as a whole, and it certainly benefits these individuals that really deserve a shot. So when I was doing my research, I learned that there were a handful of companies that were really kind of the founding fathers of neurodiversity in the United States. And for me, three really stand out, largely because they've become mentors and really good friends of Potentia. So when we were thinking about launching STARS, we went on and talked to a number of companies that had already started neurodiversity hiring programs. And for us, three really stood out. Those would be SAP, EY, and Chase, for a number of reasons. But first, because they all tie it back to ROI. They're all very metrics driven. They know that these programs have a lot of goodwill, but if they're not tied to ROI, they're not going to have that lasting impact that everyone involved wants them to. But more than that, SAP has really been able to show through measuring the number of patents that they are able to file for, that innovation goes up dramatically as a result of the program that they've started. Similarly, with EY's program, productivity has increased dramatically, and they can measure and cite those specific numbers. For Chase, it's new skill acquisition. And again, they've got the data to support it. So when we were looking at building our program, we're very fortunate to be able to stand on the shoulders of individuals who came before us, who'd really built a really impressive track record. So people have asked me, where does neurodiversity fit into the current talk around DEI? And my answer to that is that I think there's really never been a better time than today for neurodiversity, for a couple of reasons. Number one, to do neurodiversity effectively, it's all about effective communication. And effective communication, understanding and being understood, especially in the remote workforces that we find ourselves in today post-COVID, is incredibly important. Number two, to be neurodiversity friendly, you've really got to deal with the whole person. Individuals who are neurodiverse have tremendous gifts, but they will admit that they also have some blind spots. And so working with neurodiverse individuals means that you've got to think about the individual, up to and including areas of mental health that are affecting our entire population. So when we do neurodiversity programs, we find that it opens the door for conversations amongst the entire program population around these areas. And number three, neurodiversity makes no distinction about race or gender or socioeconomic status. So there's a tremendous amount of intersectionality that exists here. And we're talking about fully 20% of the population. And within that population, there are lots of Black and brown and trans and all different types of folks that we embrace completely. And so we think that you can't really do effective DEI without neurodiversity. So a couple of real success stories around the STARS program that I want to highlight. One example is an individual who we recruited. He was unemployed, been a college graduate, but had been unemployed for a couple of years, but was willing to move to a city where we had a position for him. We trained the employer. We got them ready to go with him, and we coached him up as well with some workforce readiness training that we do. He moved to the new city and was ready to start. And on day one, because of a reorg related to COVID, he was presented with a brand new job, not the one that he'd interviewed for. Now, this would be challenging for any individual, but in particular for someone on the spectrum who's used to routine and structure, this would be really challenging. To add to that, 2 weeks in, he and his cohort got the stay-at-home order because of COVID. So he was no longer able to go into the office to get coaching directly face-to-face on this new role that he'd been assigned. Despite all these challenges, this individual 12 weeks later was able to get a full-time job offer and is now doing phenomenally well at that company. So I think this just underscores the talent that's out there and the work ethic. And I can tell you this was nothing but hard work by this individual. Wasn't easy for him, but he dug in and he was able to make it an absolute win for himself and for the employer. And I'm getting great feedback from them several months later on the work that he's done. A second story around STARS was with a client where, as a result of COVID, we had to run the entire STARS program remotely. And we had an individual who had been working with us for a while, and we coached him up on how to write his resume a little bit better and how to interview a little bit better. And but mainly due to his hard work, he was able to secure an offer despite this 100% virtual situation. He wasn't an individual who'd been unemployed. He was underemployed, as we find a lot of times with some of our folks. Sometimes it's not that they're unable to get a job at all. It's just that they get a job that pays them well below what their capabilities are, and the tasks that they're able to that they have that they're being asked to perform are well below their abilities. He called me up after day one in tears because he was so excited about working in a supportive environment where the manager had sat down with him and wanted to understand his career goals and where he wanted to go long term. And it was so different from what he'd seen in his past that he just broke down. He was so happy. Now that level of excitement and loyalty for an employer, I don't know how you'd put a price on that. And for us, it was absolutely priceless as well. So one of the exciting things about STARS that we see is the potential for scalability. And that's because STARS is based on clear and impactful communication, which is really essential when you've got a distributed workforce that may be all over the country. It also allows you to tap into talent, which may also be all over the country. And when you open up and allow yourself to do that, and you see how effectively you can do that, it really opens up your world. You may not need to hire that developer who can be in your office, 40 hours a week. What if the best developer that you can find is across the country? Well, if you've got a program that allows you to engage with that worker and get great productivity out of that worker, well, then you just saved yourself on a whole lot of relocation costs without really losing anything. So we really, all of our programs are national or international in design for that very reason, and are for our customers incredibly scalable. So in January of 19, after launching STARS really successfully, we decided that we needed to add an additional capability to our offering, and we launched Potentia projects. And I'm awfully glad that we did, because I think that today it fits in incredibly well with what a lot of businesses today are facing, which in some cases, let's face it, is maybe a hiring freeze. Maybe they can't do a big workforce program, but they've still got technology initiatives that they need to get done. And they're facing some really thorny problems, some real challenges in terms of how they're going to be successful, where to invest, where to cut back. So we've got a team of neurodiverse individuals, just like we do on the STARS side. Again, we practice what we preach, who've got great expertise in analytics and blockchain and cyber and data science, and can take on turnkey roles for customers that are looking for that type of innovation and that type of fresh thinking that I think these days is needed more than ever. So we're incredibly excited about what we're doing in the project space. It's a wonderful complement to what we do with STARS. And we always want to give customers choice. And so for that customer that isn't ready to do a workforce program for whatever reason, but still wants to take advantage of the technical horsepower that we have, we think projects can be a really great option. One additional point about projects that I think is worth making, while the company is still relatively new, and as I mentioned, projects was launched in the beginning of 19, the team that we pulled together has decades of experience, and in a lot of cases, decades of experience working together. We were very fortunate to be able to pull together entire teams of neurodiverse individuals who've got expertise not only in healthcare, but in telecommunications, manufacturing, energy. These are some real thought leaders, holders of multiple patents. So some really strong technologists that we can bring to the fore, again, to solve those thorny problems that our customers are dealing with today. And that's a bit more about projects. One of the other things that we're particularly excited with about projects is that while STARS tends to be something that tends to hew toward the larger companies, projects is an area where we get to partner with some real high growth emerging companies that maybe aren't, again, ready for a STARS program, but are really looking to make their mark. So we're really excited about some of the partnerships that we've been developing and our ability with projects to work with companies of all sizes.